Make sure I don't have the copy box in front of me this time. No, you're good. No, you're all good. Okay, Shelby.
Should we test or all set?
No, we're good.
Okay, great. Thanks everyone for being here. To introduce myself, I'm Shelby Semmes. I'm the State Director with the Vermont and New Hampshire programs of the Trust for Public Land, and I'm pleased to be here in Denver today with you all to talk a little bit about the organization and specifically one of our mission service areas. We are an organization that creates parks and protects land for generations to come. And one of the most, I think, highly leveraged secret weapon impact tools that we have to deliver parks and conservation lands to communities across America is our conservation finance program. So about 20 years ago, we invested in an expertise to help communities raise money for parks and open space at a public level. So a question for you all. In the 2006 election, how much money, order of magnitude, do you think that voters in America voluntarily elected to tax themselves for parks and open space protection?
I don't know, the 2006 election, probably not very high.
Not very high?
A couple million? I don't know. Maybe
$1, Bob.
$1. So in 2006, about $40 billion was passed across 80 measures in communities across the nation, red states, blue states. And actually, the Trust for Public Land was behind, $6.9 billion across the country. The Trust for Public Land was behind $4 billion of those dollars being brought to communities. So we do this work through conducting research, designing and passing ballot measures and legislation. And we serve as thought leaders within this kind of field of creating public resources to support the infrastructure that we feel benefits communities and allows folks to have close to home nature opportunities to get outside. So another point I'd love to make is around this work is that, we often think of the federal government as being one of the biggest levers for investing in the infrastructure that we need, right? So our bridges and our highways and our parks. But in the last 13 years, the local level has generated 47% of the investment that communities have made in parks and conservation and restoration. So that's $24 billion in the 13-year period, as compared with roughly $9 billion at the federal level. So it's communities themselves that are raising their hands and saying, we want to invest in ourselves this way. How do we get the help to do this? And that's where the Trust for Public Land comes in. We have a small, almost political consulting team that can be invited in by local leaders or coalitions to run a process of conducting feasibility research, conducting a public opinion survey, developing program recommendations, developing actual ballot language that we test, and ultimately running a dedicated campaign. So I mentioned that 20 years ago, we brought this expertise online. We have an 80.1% record of success and have generated $68 billion for Americans to empower them to raise their hands, to vote on investing in themselves and their communities. And it's something we're incredibly proud of, and there's more and more needed of it today. So with that, I'd like to thank you for your time, and I'm sure that there are some questions that I'd love to field.
So I'm sorry. This can't possibly be right. It seems to me that what you just said is that American voters over the last 20 years have voted to tax themselves to the tune of $68 billion to create parks and open space? Certainly I heard that wrong.
No, you heard it right, and it's one of the facets of parks and conservation that is the most fascinating and uplifting, in my opinion, and I think an opinion of a lot of local leadership and community groups, which is parks are a bipartisan issue. Parks bring people together. Parks and conservation lands are worthy of investment. That ultimately, $1 spent in parks, conservation land, and restoration of those lands yields tenfold, in many cases, the benefits that we get from it. And that's a decision that voters across America are deciding every day and again and again.
But certainly most of that $68 billion is generated in California and Boston, where all the liberals are.
That's not true, actually. When you look at a map of the and thank goodness, it's not true. When you look at a map of, in particular, the 2016 ballot measures that I mentioned, 40 of which were on the ballots, 38 of which passed, I believe, evenly distributed across the map.
So there.
And thank goodness.
Another question.
I do. I have a question. How does who works with the local community? Is that something that, how is that structured? Like who comes in? Is there local expertise that's used, or?
Thanks for asking that. So typically, but not always, that our organization has some type of presence within a community, or somebody has read a newspaper article about a ballot measure that we did, even at a statewide level next door, in a state next door. So we are always invited in by a local leader or a coalition of parks or conservation organizations that are saying, we know where we want to get, and we need the help and expertise on how to pass the tax and bond measure decisions that are going to generate the resources for our communities to have the infrastructure that we want them to have. So we're brought in by a local community's needs and provide some technical assistance, political campaign expertise, and we bring our own resources to it. And it's a national team that's relatively small in size, and most of which is based in our Boston office. But we work around the country.
Okay, did yours count for two since you were?
I was just trying to be.
Yes, because you took my question.
Yes, okay.
Okay, thank you very much. We would love to hear what you liked about your speech first.
Sure.
Can somebody give me a quick time, Joe? I just want to make sure.
It is 2 o'clock.
Okay, I'm sorry to interrupt your thought process there, but I want to make sure we're okay.
Once I got going, it was all right. I had my opener question, I delayed in how I opened it, and I actually asked it differently than I had intended to. But once I kind of got over that, I thought my rhythm got okay. This is an area where I made the decision to go with data. And that's partly because of the research I did to educate myself about our program. And it is, the money is a big part of it. And so I think I just kind of made that trade-off. I did remember the statistics, which is good. And I think an illustrative example would have complemented it a lot. So just to skip to the next piece. But
What else did you like about what you did?
I think I really believe in the subject matter, and I think that came across.
Yeah.
There's a sincere sense that this is, a bipartisan,
Yes.
success, and that came through. Yeah, so conviction.
Good. That's kind of a good reminder to get to. Oh, I did do that. Yeah, good. Okay, feedback for Shelby.
there was one statement you made. It was the first time you referenced this, but communities themselves are the ones who want to change this or something along those lines. When you said it, your conviction and your passion really showed through, and you used hand gestures in a way that I thought was compelling at that moment, but also throughout your presentation. I felt like you were very engaging. And that statement about communities, that was and then them asking for help, that was a really smart entry into transition into TPL. Here's how we help them, here's what we bring to the table. I thought you did a great job. Next time, I'd say stick to the critical data points. So the 3 that were compelling to me were the first one you mentioned about the 6.9, there were 4 billion, TPL raised 4 billion, or I don't remember actually the numbers,
That's it.
but that was a strong point. 80% success rate of passage of the measures, and then the percent of local versus federal. So those, I felt like those were the only 3 data points I needed.
I thought, sorry, you finished?
Yeah.
I thought the emphasis that, I thought you did a great job of explaining how this is something that is on a local level, because it could be very abstract and national. You did
68 billion and
yeah. You did a great job of explaining those numbers, as she said. One of the ones that she stuck with, just how important it is for people in the local communities to make that decision and make that request and to tax themselves, and not the federal government. That was an important distinction. That was good in a complicated subject, right? That was really good.
Suggestions?
Let's see. I don't know, maybe a little, I understand, maybe a couple less statistics. Maybe that's the way I'm not super math heavy. I started to get a little lost.
I think the numbers, it would have been really different if there had been
That's
visuals.
true.
It's
That's
so
true.
hard to just verbally give numbers,
Yeah.
and so you have to be really.
I think that might be more reflection on me. I had a hard time keeping them in my head. Maybe you guys were able to keep it really straight.
Well, I mean, it's interesting because up here, avoiding jargon data overload, I saw that on the screen. I was like, there's a reason it's up there.
Yeah.
There's a reason it's up there.
Yeah, but you did the questions very well too.
I thought you have sort of like an aura about the way that you talked and held yourself that conveys like honesty and what was the word you were using? Not passion, but
Conviction, for sure.
I felt like you were telling us about a secret that was so amazing, and I want you guys to know about it. And I thought that was really powerful. I think about the people in the Dallas area who I see speak frequently, and the ones I think are most compelling are the ones that can have that gravitas about them when they're talking to a group of people. It's sort of like, I want you to come with me on this. I felt like I really saw that with you.
Suggestion for next time?
I don't know if this is new material or not, but there's a couple times you were sort of kind of fumbling over the statistics, and I think that's just a function of like how well do you know it. The flip side, of course, is that you might know it so well you end up being sort of robotic in your delivery, and it's like it's on autopilot. So there's kind of a balance there to be played at. But
I actually thought the level of statistics that you gave was pretty good for the type of presentation that you were giving, because the dollars make the impact of what you're talking about. So I thought that was very important. Not having any type of tool was just, not the best for your presentation, but you did a good job. I think what would have helped is connecting it to a story in some kind of way. Like, this is where we've had success in this area. So back to Jeff's question, it's all kind of left and, or Republican, kind of giving examples of what we've done across the country would have, I think, made more of an impact.
Having that on hand, the example to dispel the rather than
Exactly.
just saying it's evenly distributed.
Mhm.
Yeah.